Hello, South Africa. My name is Kwena Maloto, coming to you live today from Johannesburg, where DA Federal Leader John Steenhuisen will be addressing the media and launching our fourth Rescue South Africa TV ad. Now, the DA's message throughout this election has been clear. We need to unite as a nation on the 29th of May in order to rescue South Africa. We simply cannot afford another 5 years of ANC governance, and we need to ensure that we keep out the ANC-EFF doomsday coalition. The stakes have never been higher, South Africa. This election is about survival. So we'll be joined soon by various DA leaders, including John Steenhuisen, Cilliers and Helen Zille. So don't go anywhere, and keep up with the conversation using the hashtag Rescue South Africa and the hashtag DATV ad. I am now joined by our spokesperson, DA National spokesperson, Solly Malatsi. Solly, how does it feel to be here today for this ad launch?
How's it, Gwena? It's really exciting to be here at our provincial headquarters in Gauteng, and like everybody else, looking with anticipation towards what the ad will be, but I'm sure it's going to capture a lot of imagination and also spark a lot of conversation about this last few weeks going into this important election.
Now, the DA's message throughout this campaign has been consistent: rescue South Africa. Why do we need to rescue South Africa?
Well, we believe that where our country is at this stage, it's a very, very crucial stage, that we need to rally and get together to rescue our country from further decline, from further destruction that has been ongoing since the ANC has taken power. And that if we don't rescue South Africa now, we might not have a country a few years down the line.
Now, this election for all voters is a clear binary. It's either the ANC and the EFF coalition of corruption, or it's the multi-party charter. What could South Africa look like in 2029 if it's the ANC, EFF coalition of corruption versus 2029 when it's been 5 years of the multi-party charter in government?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are two choices that the electorate faced. One is the doomsday coalition that has the ANC, the EFF, and even MK with Jacob Zuma. The one is the multi-party charter anchored by the DA. And the stark difference in there is that should the multi-party charter get into power, we're going to see a prosperous South Africa that is governed well, a South Africa that functions, that has accountable and ethical leadership, and one that restores everyone's faith and belief in our rainbow nation and the success and the promise of what 1994 was about.
Okay, no, thanks. I must also ask you, I mean, it's clear when you're on the ground campaigning that people are really struggling inside this country. This election's not about, petty politicking. It's not about the politics of personalities. It's about South Africans that need rescuing. And do you think that the DA is the right party to rescue this country?
Absolutely. I mean, whenever we do ground activities, whether it's in Limpopo, in KZN, and I've had the advantage of traveling the length and breadth of this country, is that South Africans are in large numbers resonating with the DA's message to rescue South Africa. They are resonating with our message to eliminate load shedding and water shedding. They are resonating with our message to make sure that, we halve violent crime in our country. They are resonating with our message to professionalize the public service and end cadre deployment, because they have seen the damage that it does not only to our public service, but in terms of service delivery to the residents.
Now, Solly, what would your final message be for residents watching at home in the run-up to this crucial election on the 29th of May?
My final message will be, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to rescue our country from further decline. This is a golden opportunity that we have to elect a government that will lead South Africa towards prosperity, that will lead South Africa out of unemployment, that will lead South Africa towards a safe country where our children and even women can feel safe, not only in their households but in the streets, where we can have a functional government that performs and runs professionally and that can deliver to all people.
Solly, thank you so much. Folks, please don't go anywhere. We will be right back with an interview with one of our DA leaders.
(1994) was a great moment in our country's history. We were united, we had hope. We all shared the same dream of one South Africa for all.
That
dream has been hijacked, corrupted and sold out by the power-hungry and corrupt. They divide us with anger and hate. Corruption is killing our country. Those who have betrayed the struggle are the ones in power who have made themselves rich while the poor go hungry. This is not what we were promised. More empty promises, more unemployment. For 25 years, we have waited. We are moving backwards. The choice before us is simple. Either we make a change and move forward, or our dream dies. Only you have the power to bring change.
I am now joined by Helen Zille. Helen, how does it feel to be here today at our Gauteng provincial offices as we launch this fourth TV ad that's really speaking about our mission to rescue South Africa? Why rescue SA?
Well, the alternative to being rescued is dying. That's the point. If someone's drowning, you hope to rescue them. If someone's fallen into a very deep, dark pit, you try to rescue them. Because the alternative to being rescued is dying. And that is the message we're trying to get across to South Africa. It is not 5 minutes to midnight in South Africa. It's 7 minutes past midnight in South Africa, and the clock is ticking. And the longer South Africans wait to vote for the DA, the harder it's going to be to rescue this country and apply mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to it. Fortunately, we managed to rescue the Western Cape in 2009. And we have to try and rescue many other parts of South Africa as soon as possible to give us a chance.
Yeah, no, I mean, this election really is about survival. Now, we know that for the first time in history, the ANC will be dropping below 50% inside this election, which means coalition governments are the future. Now, there are lots of options, but we know one of them is the potential doomsday coalition of, the ANC, the EFF, and we could see the Patriotic Alliance and MK jumping on board. What would this mean if such a government were to lead South Africa?
Well, of course, it would have instant devastating economic impact, a really devastating economic impact. There'd be massive disinvestment. The bonds of South Africa would have almost no demand. It would be devastating. There'd be many, many houses on the market and many people trying to leave. And that would be terrible for the poor in particular, because it would mean massive job losses. Every time a business relocates out of South Africa or moves, or even families who can employ people move out of South Africa, it means that more and more and more people join the jobless queue. So that's one aspect. But I think far more serious is going to be the collapse of our democratic institutions. All sorts of things like the separation between party and state, which sounds like an esoteric concept, but is absolutely critical to holding government to account and defending the rule of law, will be gone. The judiciary will be captured. There will be no parliamentary oversight over the executive. If we thought corruption was bad in the last 30 years, you ain't seen nothing yet if the ANC, MK, the Patriotic Alliance and the EFF come to power. They will ride roughshod over every check and balance to their power. And trying to resurrect democratic institutions that have been broken is the hardest thing of all. That's why we say rescue South Africa while we still can.
No. Helen, before the DA took over the Western Cape and Cape Town with an outright majority, we had coalition governments which you led. Why is the story of the Western Cape and Cape Town a story of hope for the rest of the people of South Africa?
Well, I think the real hope came because we rescued the Western Cape early enough. In 2009, We were there, and fortunately we got a clear majority, 51%, so we did not have to go into coalition. I'd been in a coalition before in the city of Cape Town. That was a 7-party coalition, and it was a minority coalition for a while until the ID came on board. So I have been in coalitions. They're very difficult and very complex to manage, but it was spectacular to get an overall majority in 2009. Then we could take our manifesto, turn it into a plan, put a budget behind it, put performance systems in place, and go. And the result is what you see today. But what makes it hopeful is that that can happen in the rest of the country. It just takes a very simple thing. A majority of people must vote DA.
And as you said, I mean, we see what's going on in the Western Cape. The DA does get things done. Now, you've held positions in various governments and you've been involved in politics for decades. Why do you do what you do?
Well, I believe South Africa can work. I love this country. It's got spectacular potential. It's got some of the richest mineral deposits in the world. It's got some of the most ingenious and enterprising people you'll ever meet anywhere. You've got loads of commitment amongst passionate people, and we just have to learn to come together on the basis of shared values that are now in our Constitution and build a new majority to do that, and to make sure that the good people of South Africa who want this country to work and who want to work very hard to get it to work come together and pool their efforts. So that's why I get up every morning. That's why I do what I do, because I believe it is possible.
No, that really is a message of hope. What would your final message be for people at home watching in the run-up to this crucial election on the 29th of May?
Your vote really matters. Your vote really matters. Don't ever think that it won't make any difference. I was elected as mayor of Cape Town by 1 seat in the council, 1. And if a couple of people hadn't gone out to vote, we might have lost that extra seat on the remainder and never had it. And we would have lost Cape Town, and then we wouldn't have been able to turn around the Western Cape. Every vote matters. Every point matters. You know that we won the quarterfinal, the semi-final, and the final of the World Cup by 1 point. You can ask, how does 1 point make a difference in a rugby match? It makes a difference between being the world champions and being the runners-up. So it is critically important that everybody takes the privilege of the vote. And it's a right in a democracy. Of course it's a right. But I still regard it as a privilege because so many people didn't have the vote for most of our history.
Helen, thank you so much. And there you have it, folks. We'll be crossing over to our press briefing where we will be launching our 4th Rescue South Africa ad. Stay tuned.
Maladministration,
rolling blackouts,
cater deployment,
corruption, blackout, maladministration, crisis of governance, state capture,
cater deployment. There's been nothing short of jaw-dropping.
Is South Africa a mafia state?
ANC says it's feeling the heat when it comes to corruption. But many South Africans will say, never mind the heat. Our house is on fire.
Corruption is a massive problem in South Africa.
Lots of tenders, lots of kickbacks, lots of dodgy deals.
Can we still talk about any form of integrity when we talk about the governing party? Because so many of them are implicated in corruption.
Rolling blackouts, water shortages, a shaky healthcare system, and myriad other state failures. Others say this is the cost of corruption and negligent leadership.
We are now seeing the consequences of corruption.
From higher electricity and water tariffs to higher costs of food and fuel, it now costs more than ever to survive.
These added economic pressures may be the final nail in the coffin for many.
South Africa ranked as one of the most dangerous countries in the world.
The latest crime stats suggest South Africa is a crime scene.
As the unemployment rate is at a record high.
It's unacceptable that we have to bear the brunt of mismanagement, and we stand here in absolute anger.
A lack of service delivery have become the norm in South Africa.
Many municipalities have been accused of failing to deliver basic services.
Blackouts have become a way of life.
The ANC plunged this country into darkness.
The mafia state.
The ANC
State capture. Blackouts.
Why are we still in this mess?
Believe in freedom. Freedom to earn a living. Go where I want. Love who I want. Say what I believe and pursue my dreams. I am brave. I am a provider. I believe in fairness. A fairness where our achievements are determined by our choices and hard work. I am a leader. I believe in opportunity. A nation where opportunity is plentiful and everyone's rights are protected. I believe in diversity. Every person has a unique perspective and an important role to play in building our nation. We do not judge each other by how we look, but by who we are. We are South Africans working together. We are the Democratic Alliance.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we can make our way onto our seats, please grab your snacks so we can get started. All right, Azo, if we can perhaps close the door so we can get started. A very good evening, everybody. My name is Siviwe Gwachube. I'm the DA's Chief Whip in Parliament. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we do apologize for the slight delay. And thank you for taking the time out of your Sunday evenings to come and attend this engagement with us. So there are two purposes of this engagement today. The number one is we will be receiving an address from the DA leader. We'll be essentially setting out what is going to be the next steps or the next strategy for us for the next 3 weeks of this election campaign. And that is foregrounded by an election advert that will be premiered here for all of you to see, which will be going live tonight. And so he will give us an overview of what we are expecting to see from the DA in the last 3 weeks of the campaign, and we will be able to premiere that video. And then, of course, engagement with the press is incredibly important to the DA and has always been. And so we thought it was important for us to have all of you as senior journalists, opinion informers, editors and the like here in the room to have a robust, frank engagement with all of us and the DA leadership. So in the front row, you will see the DA leaders from Nicholas Nyati, who's the DA youth leader. We've got Chris Papas, who's the premier candidate in KwaZulu-Natal. We've got Dr. Anneli Lottrit, who's the deputy chief whip. We've got Peter Tixere, who's the mayor in Midvaal. We've got Greg Krambok, who's the campaign manager, the national campaign manager in the party. Cilliers Brink, who's the mayor of Tshwane. We've got Helen Zille, who's the FedEx chair. We've got Sali Malatsi as a national spokesperson, Asho as a deputy to Helen, And lastly, we've got the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, here. And so we'll be able to have an engagement in the second half of the evening where you're able to pose questions to us about the election and all things concerning the Democratic Alliance. And you can be able to, I will facilitate that session. We can be able to direct questions to particular leaders. And then we can go on and enjoy the rest of the evening. So without further delay, John, over to you.
Thank you very much, Siv, and it's great to be with all of you who are watching, but also with our very good friends in the media as well. Siv and I have just come from the National Prayer Service for the election, and you'll be happy to know that as the media, we gave a special prayer for all of you as well during the course of the election, and there was lots of amen, so I think you can take some great comfort from that. It's really great to have the key role players in the media here with us this evening, and particularly as we reach this key milestone as 24 days away from the crucial elections. The first votes will be cast on the 17th and 18th of May, but the election itself will obviously is 24 days away, and we're obviously looking forward to seeing that particular few weeks unfold. So the purpose of this event this evening is to share with you, of course, the new advert that'll be airing this evening and going forward, and it'll be on radio and various other TV and various other social media platforms. And the message conveyed in the 30-second spot sounds probably the most urgent warning in our constitutional democracy since 1994, which is why we also felt it would warrant a proper engagement with all of you here this evening. So what you will see in this advert is a symbolic representation of the future that awaits South Africa if people do not vote in the correct manner in the upcoming election. It's a warning of what the country's future will look like under a doomsday coalition between the ANC, the EFF, and perhaps also the MK and various other smaller parties like the Patriotic Alliance. Before we air the piece, I wanted to take you back, however, to April last year to the DA's Federal Congress. And at this event, I became one of the first leaders to warn South Africa about the potential ANC-EFF doomsday coalition that could well arise after the 2024 election. And I want to just read for you a bit of the speech that I made on that day in April last year, what I said at the time, and I quote, "The Doomsday Coalition will expropriate property without compensation and abolish private property rights. The Doomsday Coalition will nationalize and destroy foreign investment, businesses, banks, and mines. The Doomsday Coalition will plunge this country into an ethnic and racial conflict, the likes of which it has never witnessed before. The cold, hard truth is that the Doomsday Coalition between the ANC and the EFF has already taken over Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni with the help of its small proxy parties. And next year, it will be knocking on the doors of the union buildings. And this is a fact that should send shivers down the spine of every patriot and freedom-loving person in this country," unquote. Since the DA became the first party to warn about the imminent danger posed by an ANC-EFF coalition, not only to our economy but to our very democracy, a series of events have only heightened this risk. Since I first outlined it 13 months ago, the working relationship between the ANC and the EFF has deepened in places like Ekurhuleni, Johannesburg, and Nelson Mandela Bay. In every single place where the Doomsday Coalition already governs in South Africa, the consequences have been, frankly, catastrophic. Basic service delivery has collapsed, looting runs rampant, taps run dry, electricity doesn't ever come on after load shedding ends, and life gets harder for everyone. And despite this overwhelming evidence, there are still some amongst the analysts who've tried to dismiss these warnings as what they call scaremongering. But the message I want to say this evening is that scaremongering is only scaremongering when it's untrue. In South Africa today, it is a cold, hard fact that the ANC and EFF already co-govern with each other in some of the most important cities in our country. And as the national and provincial elections have approached, there's been an even rapid further toenadering that we've seen happening between the ANC and the EFF. We've seen it here in Gauteng, where the ANC's Panyaza Lesufi is clearly busy setting the table to go into a coalition with the EFF at a provincial level. This will mean that the industrial heartland of South Africa will be under the control of the radical populists who will destroy what's left of Gauteng's economy. We now also have the leader of the EFF, Julius Malema, on the record that the EFF will give its vote to the ANC on the conditions that property is expropriated without compensation, that mines are nationalized, and that Floyd Shivambu, the very person implicated in the looting of the VBS Bank, becomes the finance minister of the Republic. Just this past week, we had the president of COSATU, Zingiswa Losi, a key ANC alliance partner, openly saying that they want, and I quote, a leftist coalition, unquote, with the economic freedom fighters. We've also now seen other markets, as well as the Rand, have reacted and are being affected by the fears of a doomsday coalition. This is a clear signal that allowing the ANC and the EFF to take over will result in capital flight and the outright collapse of the South African economy, plunging this country into an economic hardship, the likes of only which we've witnessed in countries like Venezuela and Zimbabwe. Earlier today, when we read the newspapers, we were shocked to learn that Shell is set to withdraw its operations from South Africa. And that comes just days after learning that Anglo American may similarly divest from South Africa. These are clear and present warning signs that investor confidence is already plummeting because of the prospect of an ANC-EFF government, which will lead to a jobs bloodbath and will plunge many, many more people into poverty in South Africa. This is a time to remind ourselves of Maya Angelou's famous saying that when somebody shows you they are the first time, believe them. In this case, we should now say that senior leaders in the ANC and EFF have shown us who they are and that their plan is to form a doomsday coalition, and we should believe them. Those analysts who dismiss an interrogation of these facts as mere scaremongering are engaged, frankly, in irresponsible commentary based on woefully inadequate and potentially willfully naive determination to turn a blind eye to the very real prospect of what is happening before us. But we're not going to turn a blind eye as the DA to this existential crisis that faces our country and our economy, because the future is very, very clear to see and the facts are right before our eyes. And we believe it's our patriotic duty and our duty as the official opposition in the country to inform the electorate that the future of every South African family is in danger from the impending takeover by the ANC-EFF Doomsday Coalition. Those of you who know me and have been covering me for years know that I don't believe in beating around the bush, and I've always been a straight shooter. Some don't like it, but there it is. So here is the straight-up truth. Provincial and national coalition governments between the ANC and the EFF and their fellow radical populists will set South Africa on fire. The same straight-shooting message is what you're about to see in our latest advertisement. And you will see that if voters sit back and allow the ANC and the EFF to take over South Africa, our country will literally be burnt to ashes. To be absolutely clear, so there can be no misunderstanding, the visuals you're about to see do not represent what the DA wants for South Africa, nor what we want to see happening in South Africa. They represent the fear of what will happen if voters do not go out in large numbers on the 29th of May and stop the Doomsday Coalition dead in its tracks. Unsettling as it is to watch the video and confront the reality of how South Africa's dream will burn if we allow the ANC and EFF Doomsday Coalition, it also ends on a hopeful note by showing that not all is lost. The video tells voters that it's not yet too late to prevent the doomsday from happening and to keep the South African dream alive. The final seconds of the advertisement offers voters the solution to prevent South Africa from going up in flames. For the simple truth conveyed by this advertisement is that the only way to prevent an ANC-EFF doomsday coalition from taking place is by people coming out in their millions and voting for the DA. Just like we've been the only party honest enough to warn South Africans about the risk of the doomsday, the DA has also consistently been the only party that offers voters a clear way out. Once again, I quote from the speech I delivered from the floor of Congress in April last year. I quote, "Fortunately, there is one and only one insurance policy against the ANC-EFF doomsday coalition, and that is to vote for the Democratic Alliance, because the Democratic Alliance is the only party that is big enough and strong enough to stop the doomsday. The DA is the only party with the size, the resources, and the track record to oppose and defeat the doomsday coalition." Unquote. But the DA's efforts to prevent doomsday did not end there. We're also walking the talk. As I made clear at the Congress last year, the very reason why we committed at that Congress to what we called at the time the Moonshot Pact, bringing opposition parties together for the first time in 30 years to prevent a bulwark against us, now known as the Multi-Party Charter for South Africa, it was born out of the determination to defeat a doomsday coalition. So right from the start, we've been honest enough to take the risk of the doomsday so seriously that we went on to take the historic decision to reach across the aisle and work with like-minded opposition parties to prevent the doomsday. There are now 11 parties part of the multi-party charter. The moment that the DA has been warning about has now arrived. In just 24 days, the country will go to the polls and vote in what will be the most important election since 1994. As the DA's latest advertisement indicates and demonstrates, we face a clear binary choice in this election. And that binary choice will determine whether we resuscitate our South African dream or whether our dreams are literally burnt to ashes. After the 29th of May, South Africa will either be governed by a doomsday coalition between the ANC and the EFF and possibly MK, as well as many smaller parties that are outside of the multi-party charter. Or South Africa will be governed by a new multi-party charter government, with the DA fulfilling its role as a strong anchor party based on our size and our track record of good governance. So I call on all South Africans to engage seriously with the urgent message conveyed by this particular advertisement. I repeat that there's only one way to prevent an ANC-EFF doomsday, and that is to vote for the DA. In this election, a vote for the DA is not only a vote for a strong and experienced party to anchor a new government to rescue South Africa, it's also a vote for the biggest possible roadblock to prevent and oppose the ANC-EFF nexus wherever it rears its ugly head across the country. And so my message to the people of South Africa is clear. Don't be responsible for unleashing the doomsday on South Africa by staying at home on election day. Don't sit back and allow the ANC and the EFF to determine your and your family's future. It's now the patriotic duty of every single South African, and every freedom-loving South African who wants to rescue our country from a doomsday scenario to make sure that they come out and vote on election day on the 29th of May. Because in this election, the stakes are too high to stay at home. Thank you very much.
In this election, for the first time in 30 years, the ANC will lose its majority, but they will do anything to stay in power. Imagine a coalition between the ANC, the violent EFF, and the Zuma faction. Under this coalition of corruption, life will only get worse. This election is about survival. Unite to rescue South Africa. Vote DA.
Thank you, Rob. All right, ladies and gentlemen. It's our view that this advert is certainly a clarion call to all South Africans and essentially painting the picture that South Africans have come the 29th of May. So they can either get behind a government of destruction or a government that has already set out its governance priorities that will pull people out of poverty, get people into work, make sure that we resolve the energy crisis, make sure that we end water shedding, make sure that we cut corruption. And that's the alternative offer that we're making to South Africans and saying this is what the options are. You can either go on in this way or you can have a better government that has already set out what it will do. And so I just want to say thank you very much to the people at home who have joined us for this live broadcast. That marks the end of this section of the evening. And so I'm going to allow for a quick 5-minute comfort break, ladies and gentlemen. Grab a little something to eat and sip. But we will be back at exactly 18:40 to start the engagement with the DA leadership. Thank you.
In this election, for the first time in 30 years, the ANC will lose its majority, but they will do anything to stay in power. Imagine a coalition between the ANC, the violent EFF, and the Zuma faction. Under this coalition of corruption, life will only get worse. This election is about survival. Unite to rescue South Africa. Vote DA.
Wow, what an ad. As you heard, this election is about survival. But I'm now joined by the executive mayor of the city of Tshwane, Cilliers Brink. Cilliers, how do you feel after watching that ad?
Well, it is a sharp shot of reality. And it's not what we want for South Africa, it is what we want to avoid happening in South Africa. And it's important to understand that the DA warned against cadre deployment. People said we were fear-mongering. Cadre deployment destroyed the developmental capacity of the state. The DA warned against Jacob Zuma. We said stop Zuma, and we were criticized for that fact. He enabled state capture on a level never seen before. Now at a critical juncture, the DA warns again of an ANC-EFF coalition of doom for South Africa. We want to stop it. We're not just here to warn, we're also here to offer an alternative. So yes, indeed, it's a bit of a shocker, but it is important that we focus the South African mind on what is at stake at this election.
Now, it is true that, another 5 years of ANC governance is a scary thought, but I think it is an even more scary thought to think of 5 years of an ANC-EFF coalition of corruption, doomsday coalition. What can South Africans do to ensure that this doesn't take place?
So I think there is a complacency. Many people think, let's just give the ANC another chance, or, let's just try out, see what happens. Unfortunately, the destructiveness that will be unleashed by such a coalition has the risk that it will close out all opportunities for us to save the South African dream, to allow people to escape from poverty, to enable economic growth, to secure the rule of law, and to achieve what we set out to achieve with the Constitution. So we don't have time. And your question, what should we do? Should vote for the DA on election day as part of the multi-party charter for South Africa. That is a pathway to victory, not just in Gauteng, but potentially at national government level as well.
Now, Cilliers, a lot of South Africans don't have confidence inside coalitions. You see in Joburg and a lot of other municipalities, smaller parties selling out voters by asking for positions, for tenders, and using that as a means to build a government. What will the multi-party charter do differently?
So the multi-party charter is essentially all of the lessons we have learnt about coalitions and how to make it better. There's nothing inherently romantic about coalitions. We know that where the DA governs with a majority, things are at their best. Where we govern in a coalition, things are more difficult. But we have to accept the reality that we have to band together with other like-minded parties. And the multi-party charter represents a government for the rule of law, non-racialism, a capable state, and a social market economy that can lift people out of poverty. We have drawn the line with corrupt politicians who've wanted to negotiate about tenders, about jobs. We've said no. People have called us arrogant. We've said that is our principled duty towards not just our supporters, but the people of South Africa. So understandably, people are weary about coalitions, but remember, coalitions are a way of replacing 30 years of stagnant ANC dominant party democracy. We've got to end it somehow, and the multi-party charter is the best response, the most principled response, the best way we have of making sure that coalitions serve the people instead of the politicians and the network of corruption that we've seen.
Now, the multi-party charter has shown that it can work, and it's working in Tshwane under your leadership. Can you tell us about some of the successes you've had thus far in about a year in office?
So we've appointed a new top management. It's the essence of a capable state. You can hope to change the culture, but if you don't change the top management, the personnel, you'll never change the culture. That cultural change is slowly happening with a new group of people. They have taken strong disciplinary action on issues such as Rooiwal and against the threats of the opposition, done what is right. We've taken the first steps on energy independence with our plans on Pretoria West and Rooiwal power stations. We've made difficult decisions about the financial rescue of the city, and we've had to face down violent resistance to those difficult decisions. You know about the strike. You lived with us through the strike. So that, we've said, we're not perfect. Mistakes were made in the past. Certainly we'll make mistakes going forward. But think about it. Who would you rather have run a metro such as Tshwane? The ANC-EFF coalition with some puppet mayor, which could have been the possibility, or an imperfect one where the DA anchors the coalition, takes our lessons and pushes for our agenda in circumstances that are difficult. I would go for the multi-party charter option, even if I were standing on the outside.
Sure. Cilliers, what would your final message be for people watching at home in the run-up to this crucial election on the 29th of May?
Elections are about choices. You've got to force a choice. You've got to force a choice, and this ad that we've just released forces the choice. It is based in reality. It does warn South Africa about the possibility of an ANC-EFF doomsday coalition, but it also holds up an opportunity, a different pathway into the future, based on the success that the DA has achieved in government, based on our track record of defending the Constitution and bringing South Africans together as a community of shared values.
Cilliers, thank you so much. And to the viewers at home, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. You've heard it here, that South Africans have a binary choice. It's either the ANC-EFF coalition of corruption and doomsday coalition, or the multi-party charter. We can rescue South Africa, but we need all South Africans to unite behind the DA on the 29th of May. And if you need to find out more about what our practical solutions are to rescuing South Africa, go to rescuesa.org.za and download our 2024 manifesto. And if you're unsure about where to go vote, you can go to wheretovote.da.org.za and we will help you. But South Africa, now is the time. The stakes have never been higher. This election is about survival. So thank you so much for tuning in. Don't lose the faith, South Africa. We are the ones we've been waiting for.
In 2006, the Democratic Alliance won Cape Town by just 1 seat.
With just 42 votes, he recently won Ngeni.
Because people voted for change.
DA-run Midvaal is now the best-run municipality in Gauteng.
And a new story was written for the Western Cape when people voted DA.
But if you want a new government that works,
then you have to vote for it.
In this election, every single vote will count. Your vote can rescue South Africa. Vote DA.
Thanks for watching. All across our beautiful country, people are joining forces to elect the new government that can rescue South Africa. Like and follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Please share our videos with friends and family. Let's rescue South Africa. Vote DA.